Well, hello everyone, and welcome to your very first math lesson. Yay! I'm so glad to finally be done with all of the introductory tests and all that jazz. So now we actually get to do math. Woohoo! All right, I'm starting with chapter 3 in the book because I believe that that's where we should start. Back when we did ALEKS, this more fit the ALEKS learning path, but I think it just makes a lot more sense. So we're doing, today's lesson is chapter 3, section 1, integers and absolute value. Absolute value. And I apologize ahead of time. Spelling is not my best thing, so there might be some things that are misspelled, and that's just how life works sometimes. Okay, in the grand scheme of numbers, we have ways to group them. And so integers is a special group of numbers. The numbers that you guys are most familiar with, first of all, this is all in the set of real numbers, and we write, that's the symbol for it. In the group of real numbers, here we go, real numbers, and I tend to use the number sign to write numbers just to be quick in notes. Part of this note-taking process is actually teaching you guys some of those nice note-taking tricks. So if you can make a little symbol, it's a lot faster to draw that than it is to write the word number out. Okay? So the smallest group of the real numbers are called the natural numbers. Natural numbers, okay? And those are the ones, we call them the counting numbers. So if you're teaching a baby how to count numbers, you start with 1 and 2 and 3 and so on, okay? Now the only difference between the natural numbers and the whole numbers, which is the next group, really the only thing that adds, the only difference is with the whole numbers, you start with 0. We just add in that number 0 and then 1, 2, 3, and so on. So the integers, which are the ones that we're going to talk about in this chapter, integers. This is the adding the negative side of the numbers in. So we still don't have any fractions or decimals, but we have negative numbers. So like -3, -2, -1, still with 0, and it does still count all of the numbers that are in the groups before. So we still have 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay? So those are who we're going to talk about in chapter 3. In chapter 4, we'll talk about the rational numbers. And we'll make this chart again at the beginning of chapter 4. But the rational numbers, this is when we throw in fractions and decimals and repeating decimals and terminating decimals. Okay? And then the last group in the real numbers are the irrational numbers. Okay? And those are the numbers that are decimals that don't repeat and they never end. So numbers like pi and e and phi and like the square root of 2. Those all create decimals that don't repeat and they go on forever. So right now we're talking about integers. You probably aren't going to get a ton of irrational numbers this year. All right, so let's talk about our integers then. If you will picture with me, we'll be drawing number lines, and usually we'll either draw them horizontally like that, or if you like it better, we can draw them vertically if that helps you see things. I'll be pulling out a number line and some balloons and stuff starting tomorrow that's a vertical version that maybe you like better. When we have a horizontal number line, to the right is positive, to the left is negative. If we're doing it up and down, up is positive and down is negative. So if we start at 0 and we add in some lines here or there, 1 to the right of 0 is a positive 1. 1 to the left of 0 is -1. Okay, and then we can count off. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a positive 5 right there. And we can go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one's at a -4. Okay, so that's how that works there. Same thing on if we do a vertical number line, we can call this one 0, and we can count up, and those would be our positive numbers. And we can count down, and those would be our negative numbers. All right, so we can graph numbers. Let's say we wanted to graph the number -3. Okay, so on the vertical line, we'd start at 0 and count down 3, and there's our -3. Or over here, we start at 0, don't count this, you want to count when you move. So 1, 2, 3, that's the point -3. So some on your assignment is literally just graphing some points on a number line. That's not too bad, right? Not too bad. Another part of your assignment, it doesn't matter which, if you're doing your assignment on MathSpace or doing your assignment out of the book, some of the time, or a couple of the questions will just ask you, I'm trying to get the terminology right. On MathSpace, it calls it a directed number. In the book, it just says write an integer. Okay, these mean the same thing, and basically it's just saying, is it appropriate to call that number a positive number or a negative number? So for instance, for an example, 2 feet below flood level, 2 feet, or we could do 2 feet below sea level. Okay, below is your cue word, and you can think about it here on the number line. If it's below, that means we're going to want a -2. Okay, or we could have an elevator goes up 12 floors. Is that going to be a positive number or negative? Going up, again, makes us know that that's going to be a positive number. Okay, or on MathSpace, one of the questions says a temperature drop of 5 degrees. Well, a drop helps us know on that number line that it's going down, which means it'll be a negative number. All right, that's a couple of your questions right there. Hopefully that is making some sense to you. Now, here's the other thing. So we've mostly been talking about integers now. Now let's talk about absolute value. The definition of absolute value, that's a U. The definition of absolute value in the book describes it as this. Describes it as numbers that are the same distance from 0. Okay, so for example, on a number line, and we've got 0 here, we go 4 to the right or 4 to the left, both of those numbers are 4 away from 0. Does that make sense? So absolute value, and what the absolute value looks like is putting, instead of using parentheses, we put straight lines. And we can put a number in there, or we could put an expression in there and do some math in there, and they kind of work like parentheses in that way. But in general, if you have a number in here, so let's say we have -4, the absolute value of -4, what that's asking is really how far away from 0 is it? And distance is always a positive number. So really what happens is it makes the number positive, because that's how far away it is from 0. So that's going to be, here's your very first Sanford definition. You will get many of these throughout the year. The Sanford definition of absolute value, again, remember it's putting some number in between straight lines, and just remember that makes everything oh, I'm losing my lead, makes everything positive. Oh, mechanical pencil problems. Positive. Okay, now if you already have a positive number, let's say we took the absolute value of the number 7. It's positive. Some people try to do the opposite number and switch it to -7. But absolute value makes everything positive. If the number is always positive, it stays positive. My goodness, I've never had such problems with a mechanical pencil. Okay, does that kind of make sense a little bit? And so again, like I said, parentheses, the absolute value kind of works like parentheses. And so we can actually do some math around the absolute values. And so, for example, here's a sample problem. We could have something like 12 minus, my goodness, this pencil and I are not good friends today. 12 minus the absolute value of -8 plus 7. And we want to know what that equals. I'm going to call this number 1. So, first thing we need to do, because like I said, they kind of act like parentheses, and so PEMDAS would tell us we have to do parentheses first. The absolute value of -8 turns it positive. So now we have 12 minus +8 plus 7. And if we do this in order, 12 minus 8 is 4. 4 plus 7 is 11. Okay? So that's probably more complicated than I think that you will see. Yep, on MathSpace, I think we've covered all of those problems, just lots of graphing, positives and negatives, and in the book, again, like the story problems, I'm going to say story problems, it's just asking you, number 10 is saying, it basically gives you an expression and you just do it. And then number 11, it just really wants you to know whether the number is positive or negative. It's just looking for an integer. Okay? So again, today we've talked about integers. Those are our positive and negative numbers, and we could talk about them on a number line that's horizontal or a number line that's vertical, whichever one makes more sense to your brain. So just writing an integer, either write an integer or a directed number, that both means just write either a positive or negative number that fits the situation. Absolute value technically means it's a number that's the same, or how far a number is away from 0. Sanford's World just says it makes whatever's inside it positive. Okay? As always, please ask any questions in the discussion section on Canvas or when I get to see you in class, and good luck with our first assignment. Bye, guys.